Hello and welcome to The Art of Aging, part of the Abundant Aging podcast series from the Center for Abundant Aging. On this show, we look at what it means to age in America and in other places around the world with positive and empowering conversations that challenge, encourage, and inspire all to age with abundance. Today, I am pleased to welcome my friends Stu, Maddux, and Joe Applebaum to the show. Stu and Joe make up the Clowder Group. Well, there are others who work with them as well, but we're talking to the two of you today. It's a filmmaking venture that uses the power of documentaries to support positive social change. Speaking to Joe's experience, he has a lot of it. With 20 plus years of experience in international credits, including NBC, CBS, Fox, and Disney, Joe has now changed his mission to connect people to social issues that deserve the spotlight. As the lead producer, Joe travels widely to host community screenings and filmmaker conversations, averaging over 35 events each year. Whether addressing social isolation or championing adult protective services through Heroes of Adult Protection, HOAP, he transforms screenings into spaces for conversation and collective action. And if Joe is the producer, Stu is the creative cat. He masterfully crafts stories that elevate the voices too often left in the shadows. With 7 Emmys and a restless curiosity, he is always on the prowl for stories that spark change. His award-winning films, showcased by PBS, Showtime, BBC, and celebrated by the New York Times and NPR, have sparked global conversations. Stu leads with the heart, bringing communities together through screenings and discussions at global events like the American Psychological Association and the American Society on Aging. Stu, Joe, welcome.
Thanks, Beth. It's good to hang out with you for a while.
Yeah.
Haven't seen you in so long.
It's been a week, Joe, just to remind you. At one of those 35 events that you are traveling to. Ooh. Just a reminder that this podcast series is sponsored by the Center for Abundant Aging. To learn more about the center, including our annual symposium in October, you can visit www.abundantaging.org. So first of all, and I'll leave it to the two of you to decide who's going to go first, but what is so important about documentary filmmaking in general?
I'm going to let Stu go first.
Oh, okay. Well, so I think actually those are two words, documentary and film making. So the advantage of documentary, of course, is it allows you to understand an issue, but the film part of it, to me, means longer form, which is really like a chance to have something to watch that's long enough where you can kind of walk in somebody else's shoes. You know, the lights are down, you're really living their life, get to understand an issue more than you would in, say, shorter form documentary, which are also very useful. But that's the power of documentary filmmaking to me, is the power to immerse yourself and come out with empathy towards somebody who you've watched for an hour.
For me, it is exactly what I just witnessed, which is why Stu and I do these documentaries. I just came from a screening of an episode of Heroes for Adult Protection. I'm in Virginia right now. And for me, making documentaries on important subjects, it's about seeing the light bulbs go off over people's heads. It's all about that. It is making that impact. It is seeing people become interested in a subject that they may not have even known about an hour before seeing, a documentary or something. Hopefully something we did, but it's making that impact.
Yeah, and I love the fact that in the introduction, Stu, we said you lead with the heart, and that's what comes through with documentary films to me. That's what makes a good documentary film, is when it touches the heart, then engages the head and behavior. Mm-hmm. So neither of you started out in documentary filmmaking, but you made a pretty significant shift in your professional careers. You've chosen topics that have not been top of mind for the general public when you started those projects. So, such as they're all issues around equity. So those who are later in life and identify as LGBTQ, those who are experiencing social risk factors like isolation, fraud, and abuse. What drives your passion, and how do you decide the topics?
We're growing old, so we're
You're
we're
growing
able to
older. You're older.
abundantly, by the way,
Abundantly,
but
exactly.
but it's starting to become a lived experience as well, and the concerns that I have as I age, like financial exploitation, or marginalization, or just the ageism that I'm feeling. All these things are on the top of my mind, and so you kind of do what you know how to do, and you create documentaries and explore the issues that become passionate to you over time. So yeah, and I think it's vast, that okay, so I'm looking up at 59 at the next 20. That's a vast story out there that I can't wait to live and explore. All on film, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. No, I'm kidding.
Really? I'm exhausted. Um, you know, I don't know what I can add to that, because I completely agree with Stu, except that I at this stage in my life, I am excited about continuing to find subjects to bring to light to people, and to create documentaries. And I just I don't right now. I don't see myself stopping. I just love this.
Yeah, I know from knowing the two of you and having conversations before that you're producing and creating the movie Gen Silent came from your own desire to know what was ahead of you, from couples who are in the LGBTQ space and as they age. I know that in All the Lonely People, that you guys do a really good job. You are not the subjects of documentaries, but I have to tell you that one of the scenes in that film, which really touched me, was when you recorded the conversation of the two of you in the car driving through the English countryside, and the two of you processing and realizing we're lonely.
Yeah.
and I can't imagine that you can be a good documentary filmmaker and not be affected and be changed by the subject matter just in doing the research and meeting the people who are the characters in your films. But how do you keep your biases in check when you're working on these very heartfelt projects?
Well, see, I feel like you shouldn't keep your biases in check. I think that's a myth, of some sort of objectivity that people are supposed to have in life, and you're supposed to expunge your lens that you bring to it. And I think that it's important. That's what makes your voice unique, is your lived experience and the lens by which you look at something. So I mean, I think that you check your biases, but I don't think that you necessarily take them out. And so I think that there's a lot of disqualification going on right now in the creative community about, why are you making this film? You don't have this lived experience. And that's true. That's a really good point. There's a lot of times, but if you're interested enough, if you feel passionate enough to make a film about a subject, there's got to be some reason that you're passionate, and exploring that is, well, even, if you're doing it on film and it's going to be seen by other people, that's placing yourself in a very vulnerable position with your bias, I guess you'd say. And I think it can be extremely valuable if your lived experience comes as you're documenting. How about that?
Yeah. Yeah.
I would add to that. I agree with Stu, and I would add to that because sometimes I'm accused of being a little too outspoken. But I would say that I'll give you an example. Our film on loneliness. We were going to show it to a group. Doesn't matter what the group is, and we were told, "Oh yeah, we want to show your film." But we need you to take out certain things because we don't want to offend people in the audience. Now, these were political considerations that might be offensive to certain people. And to do that, to me, goes against everything that we are trying to do because it would have compromised the story of subjects in the film. This was their truth, their reality that we are documenting. We're not making it up. We're not choosing to put it in because it's fictional or something. This is their life. We would not have been doing our job had we done that, had we taken it out, because some people may have felt uncomfortable. And so we don't go out of our way, to do things that might be obviously offensive, but we're not going to run away from our truth either.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's probably in some ways similar to the fact that I think, as someone who preaches, some of my best sermons are the ones that I know I'm preaching to myself. That these are the things I need to remind myself about, to change. So yeah. So how do you use this creative and process of research, taking a look at subjects which are not necessarily light or fun, and how do you make them into positive experiences rather than just leaving an audience with, oh my gosh, what do we do next? Because I know that this is a key part of your mission for the Clowder Group. It's not just the filmmaking, but it's how you use those films afterwards.
Joe, why don't you, I know you feel really passionately about this, so why don't you go ahead?
Well, the impact part to me is the most important. I often say that the films that we create, they are simply a vehicle to talk about the subject. That's all they are. And when we go and I do most of these, at least currently, the screenings and the Q&As. And you know what? I am more than happy you get the questions asking about the film, and it's very flattering. How did you make this? Where are the subjects now? All of that is incredibly flattering and has its place and it's important. But I would like to get past that and talk about the subject. Let's get into what the film represents, what the film is trying to accomplish, and talk about that subject. To me, that gets me going.
Part of the challenge of independent filmmaking is staying awake, actually. So this is a wonderful opportunity, but just my dozing off has nothing to do with how interested I am in the topic.
That's right. So. And this is coming from the man who is editing our films. So
the question is, what do you? So there's the process of making the film, right?
Right.
And but then that's not the end of the process, and I don't think that people realize that. That the filmmaking is more than just the holding the camera and the editing. But I think that what you all do after that creative process is done is really important.
Yeah, so the purpose of the film is to get minds to open up for the conversation that happens afterwards, right? And usually what Joe has mentioned is that will facilitate discussion. It's a discussion usually where people share, their experiences and hopes and of the topic or what they've seen or related to. And so that and doing it in a setting that is, a group setting, like a theater, is really valuable too, because it's community, right? There is a time and a place for our films to be seen in the home and on PBS or Netflix or whatever. And that happens a little bit later on. But the part that we get really excited about right after the finish of a film is showing it almost like you would a play, like having that real-time feedback and discussion. And having, it's very empowering to have people come up afterwards and say, that really got me thinking about something. And it goes back to your other question about bias. You can just present the facts and people will form an opinion, regardless of your opinion. If you just present the facts in a very fair way, people will develop an opinion that's very respectful of a viewer or an audience member, to allow them to come up with their own conclusion, rather than you supporting your conclusion in advance. And then you talk about it, and it's super powerful. It's really, you just kind of put it all out there, and people really respond to each other. And then you leave a screening into action a lot of times. Like, we're going to change our community. So yeah, that's the most rewarding part of the work. It's not awards or how many people have seen your film or getting it on, national television or anything like that. That's great. But having somebody come up to you afterwards and say, I think I'm going to go back into social work because of what I've seen here today. I'm going to go down that career path that I really love. Yeah, that's pretty rewarding.
I would like to add just one thing to that, Beth. Another example of that. In our film, All the Lonely People, there is a section that talks about chat benches and the importance and the ease of promoting conversation just by hanging a sign that says chat bench on a bench, right? There are communities in New England, after seeing our film, they organized and we supported the creation of chat benches, public chat benches in those communities. And that's the impact that we're talking about. That's a direct example.
Yeah, absolutely. And, as you were talking, I've seen some of your films on the computer screen, on the TV, and also in those public spaces. And it's about connection. when you do see that in a public setting, and even if there isn't dialogue immediately following, other people who have had that experience with whom you can pick up the conversation afterwards. I don't know how many times I've seen Jen Silent, because I have over the years promoted it shamelessly, because it is so impactful. And I can remember when you all came to an event in Dayton and we showed the film, and we'd asked a couple of people to kind of be on a panel to give their response. And what I learned from that as an event is I don't do that anymore without making sure that the people on the panel actually have the opportunity to see the film ahead of time. Because one of those individuals in particular on that panel was so emotionally moved by the film. They had a very difficult time in real time, in public, to talk about their reaction to it. And yeah.
Did we traumatize somebody during our work together?
No, I don't think we traumatized them. But I just remembered, okay, I need to be aware, particularly if I've seen the work ahead of time. Okay, what was it like the first time I saw those? What was my reaction? What might this individual's reaction be, particularly if they so identify with one of the characters in the film, to not kind of put them in that public spotlight, to give them a little bit more preparation for being in that conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good advice.
It's hard to know sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
really
And then
hard
you'll give everybody the link 3 weeks ahead of time and nobody will watch it. So,
Exactly.
and then you have to say, I told you.
That's right. Or they lose it, or
Here's the
You know,
climax.
I will tell you a story as a filmmaker. The worst, I sit outside. I can't watch the thing, year after year after year. And so the worst thing is when somebody comes out in the middle of the film and leaves. But one time somebody left and then they came back with a box of tissues. And then I thought, all right. Now we're getting somewhere. We're getting some empathy. So.
Yeah, that actually happened today. This is for our new project, and so I'm sitting in that, because what Stu and I will do with a new project is we will sit inside, and we're not watching the screen, we're watching the audience, right? Yeah. And so I watched a few people leave, and my first thought, so I'm giving them the side eye, and my first thought is, why are you leaving? Why are you leaving? And sure enough, they came right back. They didn't come back with tissues. But it does get hard after a while to watch. But at first, it's really important. It's more than just validating, our egos or whatnot. It is, we want to make sure that the message that we are trying to send is hitting a home run. That's what's key.
Yeah, and also I think for us, knowing that other people feel it's as important as we feel it is, because you've invested all this time and emotional labor in creating this thing that you hope people feel as strongly about after seeing as you do. So you do kind of need that feedback, that affirmation in screening. So that's helpful.
Yeah, I had a number of people, and Stu, we haven't really talked. This screening was a home run for the new project, and person after person came out and told me how deeply they were touched and affected. And so, right there, I know we did our job.
Oh, good.
And I was struck last week, Joe, when we were at the conference. I don't know, in the hallway or whatever. Somebody came up and they were talking about Jen Silent, and you and I talked about, that's now 15 years ago, right? That you filmed that.
Yeah.
And how amazing it is, and a testament to the quality of that film and your storytelling, that it is still touching people who have not seen it before, who have not thought about these things before. And how...
Am I pointing at Stu?
Nope, the other way. The other way.
Well,
I don't know. Now you've covered it. And how sad it is that 15 years later, people still need to see it, because the issues are just as relevant today as they were in 2010.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, Stu can speak to this certainly as much as I can, if not more. But I mean, there was a point years ago, and I'm not going to get political at all, but there was a point years ago where we thought, okay, well, Jen Silent's run its course, and it's done. We've done our job, maybe, I don't know, whatever. And then it came back around, and so it's been sort of like this, and now it's relevant all again.
And maybe we should say, just briefly, Jen Silent follows the lives of 6 stories of individuals in the Boston area, members of the LGBTQ community, and it helps to give people an understanding of the decisions and the reasons why people make decisions, or why they don't have the same kind of options as those in the normative, who are considered normative in this culture, have. And it's not political, because you're telling it, because again, it's the real lived experience. And I think that, for me, that's also a part of the power of documentary. This is some fiction.
And it's you're right, it's apolitical too. I mean, it's just people aging, and I think people walk out going, this is just a film about aging. It's not a film about, an LGBTQ, whatever. I think it's interesting though, that with the focus on the transgender community, there's a very strong transgender storyline in this film. It's going to be interesting to see whether it continues to go on or it's kind of muted now because of that. So time will tell, but I've been surprised at the interest since the beginning of the year. This is 2025, in the film, a renewed interest. So it's interesting. You just never quite know. You think it's going to be, off limits, but it isn't.
And then your choice to do All the Lonely People. The research had come out about the loneliness epidemic and the damage it was doing, and then you all dug into it. I remember talking to you guys in March of 2020, and you're like, we thought we were done filming, but maybe we need to re-examine this as the pandemic hit, and the fact that you did, and it wasn't finished when you thought it would be, but it's a more relevant story because you knew, even in those early days of the pandemic, that this was going to affect loneliness and isolation around the world.
I'm not sure it was, you're right, but looking back, it was like, oh yeah, of course we did that. But it was like turning a ship. It was like, as each day passes, you're kind of like, maybe do we have to? And then finally, it's about 3 months later, it's like, yeah, I think it's kind of like a mourning process, because after 2 years, you want to be finished with anything, right?
Yeah.
And then having to kind of reopen it up.
I'm glad we did. I will go a step farther. I remember clearly that when we were going through that process, and Stu turning to me and said, "We have to keep shooting," and I remember thinking, "Ah."
Oh yeah, that's like,
because I was thinking as the producer, I was like, nope, we need to move on. We need to get this finished. But he was right.
Well, we had scheduled you to come to Ohio to show it, and realized, okay, we're going to show parts of it because it's not going to be finished. Yeah.
But that actually turned into a positive, because then we started doing all these clip presentations during the pandemic, especially with AARP that was hungry to get this out to its members. So we arranged these clip presentations while we were still trying to shoot, remotely, with sending cameras around the world and edit and all of this stuff. And that actually created content before, we were ready to show the whole film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So people were waiting for it.
Yeah, we stumbled across a great way to make impact, which is bring people into the process as we're finishing it, show clips, get their feedback, start the process then.
So did that whole process help prepare you then for your current project? Because it's not a full-length documentary, but you're doing a multi-part documentary series.
Yeah.
It is true. It is true. We are, instead of waiting until all 6 episodes were finished and, present them, here you go. We have 2 episodes that are finished. I showed one at this conference today. We showed, as you know, one last week, and the work continues on the other 4.
I was going to say, this series is about adult protection and recognizing adult abuse, and has very hopeful endings about people who kind of come together to help a person be, who's a victim of abuse, become a survivor and thrive. And the adult protective services is something people I didn't know anything about. And the stories are amazing, and the people are completely unsung heroes. So it checks all the boxes from a filmmaking standpoint or a storytelling standpoint. And it definitely right now checks all the boxes from an impact standpoint, because I think people can really rally around these folks to protect their funding in the months ahead. Because ultimately what they do is protect our right to make our own decisions in life.
Yep.
And who doesn't want that? It's very relatable, the work that they do. And we want that. I want to be able to have agency as long as I can. And they're the ones that do that. So go ahead.
So what pieces of this story, of this project, have most affected you, the two of you personally?
Well,
The new series?
Mm-hmm.
So it coincided with the death of my father, me becoming a caregiver for my mother, I guess primary caregiver. And I realized how easy it is to slip into these situations where, maybe you're making a financial decision on their behalf, and you have to check that. Am I not checking what, it's just like with the best of intentions, you can start down a path of, maybe taking agency away from them, and I think everybody who's been a caregiver for a parent probably goes through this, and I'm learning it. So that's what surprised me the most is people are not necessarily bad guys. It's just they sometimes start making decisions that take them down a path that's not good.
Well, sometimes those are easier. It's just like with our kids. It's, okay, it's just easier for me to do this or to make this decision than to go through the process of talking with my child about, the same thing with older adults. It would
That's
just be
it.
easier. Yeah.
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 Well put.
One of the things that I love about this new series also is that I realized that it touched home for me too, and that my mother, who is deceased now, was suffering from Alzheimer's and dementia, and she was the victim of financial fraud in our own family, I had no idea. We didn't know until later, and I didn't think about it in those terms of APS, Adult Protective Services. I did not think about it in those terms until we started making this docuseries. And then I realized, wow, that's in my own family. And if I'm realizing that, I love talking to other people about this because I see the light bulbs going off, with people thinking about their own families and their neighbors and, other people in their lives who maybe before seeing this didn't even, they weren't thinking in those that aspect. They were thinking about something different. So I think it's really important.
Yeah. So how do you choose what your next project's going to be? I know that you're still working on this one, but I also know the way your brains work and you are thinking further out. How do you choose the next project, the next subject?
Well, oftentimes the previous project leads to the next project in terms of, wow, we're stumbling across something in this project we really ought to explore further. So there's a few things we think about. We think about, like, do we have a passion for it? Can we raise money for it? Because it takes a lot of money to be able to make these, and people have to be willing to get behind it.
Yeah.
And is it going to be on people's minds in 2 years? Is it an issue that is going to be hitting its nexus in 24 months when we would start doing clip presentations with it? So you kind of have to think ahead a little bit. I think that's why we tackled loneliness, although it kind of, COVID came into play. But when we started that 2 years before COVID, we had polled people and asked them, a number. Oh, right, Beth, you were on that.
Yeah.
You were on the survey. We asked people, what do you want to film about next? And everybody overwhelmingly said loneliness and isolation. So we knew in 2 years it would probably, you all were kind of in the field of caregiving and aging. And so we knew that it would be in the public's mind 2 years later.
And Stu and I weren't even thinking about that subject. And when it came back overwhelmingly for loneliness and isolation, I think both of us were a little perplexed. Like, okay, what do we do now?
Oh, I was scared. It's like, how do you make a film about loneliness and isolation? This is going to be a train wreck,
But the funny thing is, as we became knowledgeable about this, we realized actually, there was a huge universe around it, and we were simply unaware of.
We had to impassion ourselves because we definitely didn't have a passion for it at the beginning. And then we realized that we're part of the story. So yeah.
I remember that email came across my phone, and I was at the American Society for Aging conference.
Oh, yeah.
And, that we were talking about it at the conference. I've been to workshops on
Yeah.
it. So the timing of when you send those things out can be really important.
True.
And with Heroes of Adult Protection, that came around because, well, we were showing all the lonely people at the National Adult Protective Services Association, NAPSA's annual conference, and they approached us to make a documentary about APS and APS workers. So that was sort of like we were not thinking about making a film about adult protective services, I assure you. But as soon as we started to, and it's not like Stu and I are knowledgeable on all these subjects. We go out and we educate ourselves. And as we got educated, we understood the importance of doing it, and we figured it out.
Yeah. Well, we could continue to talk for a very long time, and we can do that later when we're not being recorded. But as we do. But before we come to the closing questions for the podcast, please share with folks how they can find out more information about you and your projects.
You can visit our website, theclowdergroup.com, where the Clowder, see the cat over my shoulder here, and you heard it kind of in Beth's introductions to us. The Clowder is the name for a group of cats. So it's spelled Clowder, not chowder,
or
not
Crowder,
like in the sky, or Crowder, Clowder, theclowdergroup.com. And we have clips there. You can, choose to stay informed with our work. And join us on this journey that's kind of very rewarding.
Yeah.
So one other thing we do here before we come to a close is we ask our guests 3 questions about your own perceptions of aging. So are you ready for me to ask the 2 of you?
Bring it.
Okay.
When you think about how you have aged, what do you think has changed about you or grown with you that you really like about yourself?
Do you want me to go first?
Oh, yes.
What has changed about me is that I care less. The gift of not caring grows with each passing year. Not taking things so seriously, I should say. And I like more about myself now is it's just really nice to kind of know what you're doing. And then the other part of that is you don't know anything. And so It's really nice to not know anything. I don't know if any of that makes sense, but I bet a lot of people who are listening can relate to what I'm saying.
I think so.
Joe, you're up.
My turn. What's changed about me is I am more focused, especially lately in the last 3 years. I am more focused on me in a healthy way. And my self-care, and I guess it's sort of that expression, if the plane is crashing, put your oxygen mask on first so you can help other people. So I'm trying to do things. I guess that's what I've been focusing on. And the other thing that I really like about myself, and I have to give myself credit for this, is I have learned to forgive myself more. I have always been in my past, very hard on myself, very critical of myself, very much so. I think a lot of people, A lot of us are. Maybe our expectations are higher for ourselves than they are for other people, you know. And I've worked on forgiveness a lot.
Excellent. Okay, question number 2. What has surprised you most as you've aged?
Well, I'm going to go back and say, I mean, just how little you really know. Just, you know, and I guess the reverse of that would be how much you thought you knew when you were younger. It's just funny to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Joe?
This may sound silly, but my energy level. I have, you know, at the ripe old age of 39, ha ha ha.
Joe, be bolder, claim older. You don't want to be 39 again. Let me tell you about the happiness curve. We'll do that another day.
No, I don't. I'm quite happy with my age. I have more energy. I feel like I have more energy and more excitement and more enthusiasm across the board than I did when I was in my 20s. And that has surprised me.
It's that B12 vitamin.
Is that B12? Yes.
Take your vitamins, folks. Yourself. Yeah.
Okay, last question. Is there someone that you've met or who's been in your life that has set a good example for you in aging? Someone that inspires you to age abundantly?
There's so many, given the type of films we make.
That's true. That's really true. Yeah, yeah.
There's one, each of you.
Well, okay. I'm going to choose. I didn't know it was somebody we have. Is it somebody we know, or can it be somebody?
Name.
I would like to choose. I'd like to choose like Colonel Sanders, because he, like Grandma Moses and a lot of other people, started late in life, and I really get a lot of inspiration at this point from people who are just getting going, and tells me I can still got a lot to do. So excellent. Colonel Sanders, he didn't start until he was in his 60s.
That's right. That's right.
Wow. Colonel Sanders is tough to beat. You know, I'm not going to name a name, but this is a real person. It's a woman who I find inspirational. She is in her late 80s, yet she does yoga every day. She bike rides every day. She travels the world, and she's just very, very wise. And I should name her. I can name her first name, Sandra. And she lives in Ventura, but she is definitely like a role model. It's like, that's where I want to be when I'm in my late 80s. She's very curious. She tries different things. She goes to meetups.
Yep.
I want to be that.
That's what we tell people. When you're looking for who's your abundant aging influencer, it's the person you say, I want to be like Marion. I want to be like Jack when I'm their age. Yeah. Well, thank you to the two of you, and thank you to our listeners for listening to this episode of The Art of Aging, part of the Abundant Aging podcast series from the Center for Abundant Aging. And we want to hear from you. What's changed about you that as you've aged that you love? What has surprised you most, and how do you define abundant aging, and who's your abundant aging influencer? Join us at www.abundantaging.org to share your ideas. And one more time, where can folks find the two of you?
theclowdergroup.com, spelled CLOWDER.
Thank you to the two of you. I know, Joe, you're out and about and traveling, and so we're actually talking from both coasts and in the middle of the country for this podcast. But thank you for your time. Thank you for all that you do, and personally for your friendship. So thank you.
Thank you, Beth.
Thank you, Beth. It was all very nice.